He said she didn't belong in that company, but what he didn't know was that she'd spent her entire life opening doors no one else dared to touch. Vanessa woke up at 4 every morning, moving silently in the dim glow of a lamp to avoid waking her daughter, Hope. Every sunrise brought a new battle, but Vanessa faced each one head-on. She was a single mother, a realtor, and most importantly, the mother of a child with a disability. Her days were a constant juggle: medical appointments, work calls, therapy sessions, and meetings that tested her strength. At her real estate office, success was measured in commissions, smiles, and handshakes. But Vanessa measured success differently. A month's worth of medication, the tuition for Hope's special school, a day without humiliation at the hands of Mr. Carson, her supervisor, a man who took pleasure in belittling her in front of others, mocking her clothes, her hurried makeup, and her supposed special privileges. Another early exit? He'd sneer, eyes cold as steel. Must be nice having special treatment just because you have a kid. Vanessa swallowed her dignity daily, forcing a smile that masked the bitterness she felt. Her co-workers lowered their eyes, discomforted, yet unwilling to speak up. No one defended her. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Vanessa rushed home to find Hope on the floor, crying. The babysitter had left early, annoyed at being kept overtime again. As Vanessa held Hope close, she whispered softly, promising things she wasn't sure she could fulfill, but she'd try, she'd always try. The next morning, Mr. Carson humiliated her again in the morning meeting, claiming her sales numbers were slipping, openly questioning her commitment. Vanessa's voice shook, her throat tightening, but she kept quiet. She couldn't afford to lose her job. But that evening, as Vanessa cleaned up the kitchen, Hope approached her, shyly clutching a drawing. "What's this, sweetheart?" she asked softly. "You, Mommy," Hope smiled. "My hero." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Her daughter saw strength where the world saw weakness. At that moment, Vanessa knew something had to change. She'd tolerated enough. Tomorrow, she'd face Carson differently, head up, dignity intact. If you've ever had to work twice as hard to be considered half as good, take a moment for yourself. This story might be closer to yours than you think. Vanessa arrived early, ready for anything. Her heels clicked softly against the cold office floor, echoing her resolve. She moved towards her desk, head high, chest tight, prepared for another confrontation. But today felt different. The whispers seemed louder, the looks heavier. Something was off. Mr. Carson emerged from his office, his expression smug, holding a stack of papers. "Vanessa, come in," he said, tone dripping with disdain. Vanessa followed, heart racing. Inside, Carson threw the stack onto the desk, scattering papers across the surface. "Explain this." She glanced down, heart sinking as she recognized the documents. Contracts she'd worked tirelessly to close, altered to reflect mistakes she never made. "I didn't do this," she breathed, panic clawing at her throat. "Oh, I think you did," Carson sneered, his voice cold. "This is grounds for immediate termination." The room felt small, the walls closing in. Vanessa's pulse quickened, but she refused to let him break her. "You know I didn't," she whispered, voice steady despite the storm inside. Carson leaned in, eyes dark with arrogance. "Prove it." Shaken but determined, Vanessa gathered the papers, mind racing. She saw clearly now. Carson wanted her gone, not because of her work, but because of who she was. A single mother burdened with responsibilities he neither understood nor respected. Returning to her desk, co-workers avoided her eyes, their silence echoing loudly. Vanessa's pride cracked just a bit more, but she refused to shatter. Later, as she tucked Hope into bed, tears welled up again, fueled by anger and despair. "Mommy?" Hope asked, sensing her pain. Vanessa brushed Hope's hair softly, smiling gently. "It's nothing, baby." But deep down, it was everything. Late into the night, Vanessa searched through emails, texts, and calls, desperate for anything to clear her name. Her eyes grew heavy, frustration consuming her. She was about to give up when an email notification appeared. Subject: urgent. Sender. Anonymous. She hesitated, heart pounding. She clicked, breath held tight. Inside, the message read simply, "Check Carson's drawer, top right, tomorrow before he arrives." Vanessa stared at the screen, fear and curiosity clashing violently within her. Was this a trap or a lifeline? As dawn crept closer, she knew what she had to do. She had nothing left to lose. The next morning, trembling, she approached Carson's empty office, heart thudding like a drum. With cautious fingers, she opened the drawer. Inside, nestled between papers and pens, she found something that froze her blood. A photo of Hope, her precious daughter, taken without her knowledge, and behind it, handwritten words that turned her stomach. "She's next." Vanessa gasped, the room spinning. She was being threatened, and now her daughter was part of the sickening game Carson played. Vanessa stood frozen, the photograph shaking in her hand. Hope's innocent smile stared back at her. Painfully unaware of the twisted game unfolding around her, fear, anger, and despair surged through her veins, mixing into something stronger, a mother's fierce instinct to protect her child at any cost. She carefully placed the photograph back, heart pounding in her ears. Carson was dangerous, not just cruel, and this was no longer about humiliation at work. This was personal. Throughout the day, Vanessa moved like a ghost, her mind consumed by thoughts of Hope's safety. Every glance from co-workers felt suspicious. Every laugh in the break room echoed cruelly in her mind. She tried to remain calm, knowing any misstep could endanger her daughter further. Just before lunch, Carson called Vanessa into his office again, eyes gleaming with a cruel amusement. "You're unusually quiet today," he said mockingly, leaning back in his chair. "Feeling guilty about something?" Vanessa forced herself to breathe, steadying her voice. "I'm just here to work." Carson smiled bitterly, eyes narrowing. "Then perhaps you should focus more on your responsibilities at work rather than making excuses because of your personal life." She nodded stiffly, holding back the storm of words, fighting to escape. Each moment in his presence was torture, yet she endured it for Hope's sake. That evening, Vanessa rushed home, her heartbeat frantic. She held Hope tighter than ever, desperate to protect her from threats unseen. As she kissed her daughter goodnight, Vanessa whispered softly, "I promise I won't let anyone hurt you." Late into the night, sleepless and desperate, Vanessa decided she had to take action. Her courage had been tested enough. Gathering every scrap of evidence she could find, emails, texts, the anonymous note, she began compiling her case. But the thought lingered, haunting her like a shadow. Could she trust anyone? At dawn, exhausted yet resolute, Vanessa walked to her car, heart heavy but eyes bright with determination. As she reached for the door handle, something caught her eye. Hope's small shoes, left carelessly outside. She picked them up, a simple act turning symbolic. These shoes represented the innocent steps her daughter had yet to take, a life filled with possibilities. Carson would never steal that away. But as Vanessa started her car, she felt a chill, a sense she was being watched. Glancing around nervously, she saw nothing but shadows. Driving away, she barely noticed the black car parked just down the street, engine softly humming. The driver watched carefully, raising a phone to his ear. "She's leaving now," the man whispered. "What do you want me to do?" The drive to the office felt longer than ever, each mile dragging heavily under the weight of Vanessa's fears. She parked in the usual spot, her fingers trembling slightly as she gathered her belongings. Each step toward the building was heavier than the last, yet Vanessa moved forward, Hope's laughter echoing faintly in her mind, giving her strength. At her desk, she carefully organized her documents, her plan crystallizing. She'd file a formal complaint against Carson with HR, though doubt lingered. Would anyone believe her? As Vanessa prepared herself, she noticed someone approaching. Maria, the elderly cleaner, eyes gentle yet perceptive. Maria rarely spoke, but today she paused, gently touching Vanessa's shoulder. "Be careful, Misha," Maria whispered softly, eyes sincere and filled with concern. "Eyes and ears here. They belong to Carson." but you are stronger than they know." Vanessa nodded, grateful for the unexpected support. Maria squeezed her hand briefly before continuing down the hall, leaving Vanessa strengthened yet cautious. Minutes later, heart racing, Vanessa entered the HR office, breath tight in her chest. The HR director, Ms. Whitaker, listened intently as Vanessa laid out her evidence, each humiliating incident, the threats hidden within the photograph, Carson's twisted games. At first, Ms. Whitaker's face was unreadable, but slowly empathy crept into her eyes. "Vanessa," Ms. Whitaker began carefully, "I understand your concerns, but Mr. Carson is a valued manager. Accusations like these require proof beyond suspicion." Vanessa's heart sank. Proof beyond suspicion. She'd already laid bare her deepest fears. Was it not enough? As she left HR, she felt utterly defeated, Carson's cruelty seemingly untouchable. Returning to her desk, eyes stinging, Vanessa wondered if she'd just sealed her fate. Then her phone buzzed softly, jolting her from despair. Another anonymous message. "Meet me tonight. Parking lot, 8 p.m. Bring your evidence." Her pulse quickened. Was this her anonymous ally or a trap set by Carson? She hesitated, uncertainty twisting painfully within her. But then an image flashed through her mind. Hope, smiling, trusting, vulnerable. Vanessa had no choice but to trust that a door was finally opening. That night, darkness surrounded the parking lot, each shadow sinister, each noise alarming. Vanessa waited, heart racing, documents tightly clutched in her hand. A figure emerged slowly from the shadows, stepping carefully into the dim glow of the street lamp. Vanessa gasped, disbelief gripping her. Standing there was someone she never expected. Carson's secretary, Abigail, pale and visibly shaken. "I know everything," Abigail whispered urgently, eyes glistening with tears. "And if you don't stop him now, he'll destroy you and your daughter." Vanessa stared at Abigail, heart pounding, disbelief mixing with a fragile hope. A secret ally inside Carson's circle, someone finally willing to speak. Abigail's voice trembled as she spoke. "He's been covering up everything. The threats, the false reports, the discrimination. I have files, emails, recordings. I've been afraid to come forward. But not anymore." Vanessa's hands shook as she took the USB Abigail pressed into her palm. It felt heavier than any paycheck, filled with truth and danger all at once. "You have to be careful," Abigail warned. "He's ruthless, and if he suspects we're working together, I don't want to imagine what he'd do." Vanessa nodded slowly. For the first time in months, she felt the faintest flicker of hope. A chance to fight back, not just for her dignity, but for her daughter's safety. Days passed in a blur of whispered meetings and cautious plans. Vanessa spent late nights poring over the files, uncovering more than she expected. Messages where Carson mocked her struggles, denied Hope's disability, and plotted how to remove her problem quietly. At work, Carson's sneers grew sharper, his eyes colder. He noticed the shift in Vanessa's demeanor, the steel replacing submission. He tried to intimidate her further, but Vanessa held her ground. One afternoon, as she returned from a meeting, Vanessa overheard Carson speaking with a group of executives. His voice was low but venomous. "She thinks she's untouchable now, but we'll see how long that lasts." Vanessa's blood ran cold. She wasn't just fighting a man, she was up against a system designed to keep women like her silent and invisible. That night, Hope surprised Vanessa with a new drawing, this time a picture of a door with a key shining in the lock. "Mommy," Hope said softly, "this is the door you're going to open." Vanessa smiled, tears threatening to fall. Hope's faith in her was unbreakable, but just as she was about to reply, her phone buzzed violently. A text from an unknown number. "Stop now, or this door closes forever." The message was clear, chilling. Fear crept through Vanessa's bones, but so did an unyielding courage. She wouldn't be silenced, not for herself, not for Hope. She met Abigail in secret, their plan growing sharper. They would take the evidence to the State Labor Board. Public exposure was their only weapon against Carson's cruelty. Yet each step toward justice carried a risk that gnawed at Vanessa. She could lose her job, her home, even custody of Hope if Carson twisted the story against her. One evening, as Vanessa left work, a cold voice stopped her cold. "Leaving so soon, Vanessa? Got somewhere special to be?" It was Carson, his grin cruel, shadowed by the parking lot lights. Vanessa forced a calm smile. "Just going home." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you can fight me? I own this place, and if you think I'll let you take it away, you're dead wrong." Vanessa's fists clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not afraid of you." Carson laughed, dark and hollow. "You should be." Later that week, a sudden audit was announced. Vanessa's accounts were scrutinized, emails analyzed. She felt the walls closing in. Then came the worst blow. An anonymous letter arrived at her door, accusations that she had forged documents to steal commissions. Her world blurred. Vanessa knew it was Carson's doing, but the damage was done. At the hearing, she stood alone, words twisted against her, reputation crumbling piece by piece. Back home, Hope clung tightly, whispering, "You're still my hero." Vanessa looked at her daughter, broken but unbowed. She reached for the key hanging around her neck, a gift from Hope, and whispered, "I'll find the door, baby, I promise." But just as she took a breath, the power flickered off. In the darkness, a knock echoed sharply at the door. Vanessa's breath caught in the darkness. The knock came again, sharp, insistent. Her heart raced as she moved toward the door, each step heavy with dread. Hope clung to her side, eyes wide in the shadows. "Who is it?" Vanessa called, voice steady but low. No answer. Just silence, then the faint rustling of leaves in the night wind. Slowly, Vanessa cracked the door open, just enough to peer out. No one, just an empty porch, bathed in moonlight. She stepped outside, scanning the street. A folded envelope lay on the welcome mat. With trembling hands, she picked it up. Inside, a single note. "You're running out of time. Stop digging, or Hope pays the price." Vanessa's fingers tightened around the paper. The threat was clear, the stakes higher than ever. But surrender was not an option. That night, as she tucked Hope into bed, her daughter's small hand found hers. "Mommy, you're brave," Hope whispered. "Don't let the bad man win." Vanessa swallowed hard, nodding. "I won't, baby. I promise." The next morning, Vanessa arrived at work to a cold silence. Her desk was empty, her personal belongings boxed up, a termination letter taped on top. "Effective immediately," it read. No explanation, no mercy. Carson's voice echoed behind her, smug and victorious. "This company doesn't have room for distractions." Vanessa stood tall, pain burning deep, but her spirit unbroken. She looked around, no allies in sight. But then a soft voice caught her attention. "Not everyone's lost," Maria said quietly, placing a folded piece of paper in Vanessa's hand. "For when you need it." Vanessa unfolded it to find a phone number and a message. "Legal aid. Call when ready." As she stepped out into the harsh light of day, Vanessa felt a flicker of hope amid the storm. The battle was far from over, but as she dialed the number, her phone buzzed again. A photo message. Hope at school crying, and beneath it a text. "Last warning." Vanessa's hands trembled as she stared at the photo. Her daughter, vulnerable and scared, miles away from home, and the chilling message threatening their safety. She swallowed the lump in her throat and forced herself to breathe. This was no longer just about a job or a boss. This was a fight for Hope's future. With the legal aid number in hand, Vanessa met with a lawyer who listened with quiet intensity. Together, they mapped out a plan to expose Carson's abuse, discrimination, and threats. But the path was treacherous. Evidence could be dismissed, witnesses intimidated, and Vanessa's strength was stretched thin, caught between court dates and Hope's therapy sessions. One evening, returning home late, Vanessa found her apartment door ajar. Her heart slammed. Inside, everything seemed untouched, but a single shoe, one of Hope's, lay in the hallway, oddly out of place. Her breath caught. Someone had been inside, She locked every door, checked every window, but fear had rooted itself deep. That night, unable to sleep, Vanessa sat at the kitchen table, Hope's drawing of the door and key spread before her. Her phone buzzed again, a voicemail from an unknown number. She played it, heart racing, a man's voice distorted and threatening. "Stop this now or you'll regret it. For Hope's sake." Vanessa's hands clenched. The stakes had never been clearer, but deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it." She picked up the phone, ready to call the lawyer. Vanessa's fingers hovered over the phone before she finally dialed the lawyer's number. Each ring was a heartbeat, a pulse of resolve in the quiet tension that filled her small kitchen. Hope slept in the next room, her soft breaths a reminder of what was at stake. When the lawyer answered, Vanessa poured out everything: the threats, the harassment, the false accusations, and the frightening break-in. The lawyer listened without interruption, voice steady and calm. "We have enough to open an official investigation," she said. "But Vanessa, this will not be easy. Carson has influence and his tactics will escalate." Vanessa nodded, absorbing the weight of the coming fight. "I'm ready," she said quietly. "For Hope, I'm ready." Over the next few days, the office buzzed with subtle shifts. Vanessa's former co-workers avoided her gaze, whispers trailing behind her like shadows. But one person, David, the new intern, approached her with cautious sympathy. "Ms. Vanessa," he whispered, sliding a small envelope into her hand. "I found this on Carson's desk." Inside, Vanessa found a voicemail recording, Carson mocking her situation, admitting he manipulated records, and planning to fire her to keep the company image clean. Vanessa's breath caught. This was the proof she needed. But before she could act, her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You're closer than you think. Watch your back." That night, as Vanessa prepared to meet her lawyer with the evidence, she noticed a figure watching her from across the street. The streetlights flickered as the silhouette vanished into the shadows. Her heart pounded. This fight was no longer just for justice. It was a fight for survival. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and unforgiving. Vanessa sat stiffly beside her lawyer, every nerve on edge as the case against Carson unfolded. Carson sat across the room, his smirk barely hidden, confident in his power. But as the evidence played, a chilling compilation of emails, recordings, and witness testimonies, the smugness began to fade. Vanessa's voice cracked as she recounted the days of humiliation, the stolen promotions, the endless threats, and the pain of fighting to protect Hope. Every word was a key, unlocking a door that had been closed for too long. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread. For the first time, people saw the truth behind Carson's mask. But victory was not yet certain. Carson's lawyers fought back fiercely, questioning Vanessa's credibility and motives. The fight stretched on, exhausting and relentless. One evening, after a long day of testimony, Vanessa found a note slipped under her hotel door. "You think this is over? Think again." Her phone buzzed. Another message. A photo of Hope's empty wheelchair left in the school hallway, a silent threat that chilled Vanessa to the bone. Yet in the quiet moments, Hope's words echoed in her mind. "You're my hero." Vanessa closed her eyes, drawing strength from her daughter's faith. This was no longer just about a job or a man. This was about dignity, courage, and the right to stand tall against injustice. As the courtroom doors closed behind her, Vanessa felt the weight of the fight ahead, but also the undeniable power of hope. Vanessa woke to the harsh buzz of her phone, a text from an unknown number. "You think you're winning? We're just getting started." The words burned on her screen like a warning. She glanced across the room to where Hope slept peacefully, unaware of the war raging outside their door. Vanessa's chest tightened. The threats weren't just about her anymore. They targeted the most precious part of her world. At work, despite her termination, whispers of support grew quietly among the staff. Maria's encouraging glances, the subtle nods from co-workers who dared not speak aloud. Vanessa wasn't alone. Her fight was awakening something bigger. Determined, she and her lawyer prepared for the final hearings. Evidence stacked high, witness after witness ready to expose the truth. But Carson wasn't done. His manipulation was like a dark cloud looming, threatening to suffocate justice. One evening, as Vanessa left a meeting, a car screeched to a halt beside her. A man she didn't recognize leaned out the window. "You should drop this," he warned, voice low and dangerous. "For your daughter's sake." Vanessa stood her ground. "I won't be silenced." The man smiled coldly and drove off, leaving Vanessa shaken but resolute. Back home, she found Hope drawing quietly at the kitchen table. The picture was of a strong woman holding a key in one hand and Hope's hand in the other, walking through a bright, open door. Vanessa smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "We're almost there, baby." But as she looked up, her phone lit up with a final message. "This door won't open without a price." The courtroom filled with tension as the final hearings began. Vanessa's lawyer presented the last pieces of evidence: Carson's threatening messages, the forged documents, and testimonies from staff too afraid to speak before. Carson's facade cracked under the weight of truth. His smug arrogance faded, replaced by a desperate fury. Vanessa spoke with quiet strength, her voice steady as she detailed the toll the abuse took, not just on her career, but on her daughter's well-being. Outside, reporters gathered, their questions filling the air with a new kind of hope, one where victims were heard and believed, but victory still hung in the balance. That night, Vanessa received a call from an unknown number. The voice was distorted, but unmistakably Carson's. "Finish this now or Hope suffers the consequences." Vanessa's hands shook, but her resolve did not. She knew the fight wasn't just about her dignity. It was about breaking the cycle of fear. As she hung up, a soft knock echoed at the door. Opening it, she found a package, inside a small box with a single silver key and a note. "The key to your freedom." Vanessa held the key tightly, the weight of possibility heavy in her palm. But as she looked up, her phone buzzed again. This time a video message showed Hope in the school hallway, surrounded by strangers looking frightened. The real battle was just beginning. Vanessa's hands trembled as she stared at the video on her phone. Hope, small and scared, surrounded by unfamiliar faces in the school hallway. A cold wave of panic crashed over her, but she swallowed it down. Fear would not control her, not now. She immediately called the school, her voice firm and demanding answers. After tense minutes, they confirmed Hope was safe, but the strangers were staff members assigned for extra supervision due to recent concerns. Relief washed over Vanessa, but the message was clear. The threats were escalating beyond words. That night, Vanessa sat at her kitchen table, the silver key gleaming under the dim light. It felt like more than metal. It was a symbol of the fight she had waged and the doors yet to open. She thought about the long hours, the whispered insults, the sacrifices made for Hope's care, and the quiet courage it took to face each day. The next morning, Vanessa arrived at the courthouse with renewed strength. As the final verdict approached, she felt the weight of everyone who had stood behind her, the single mothers, the working women, the silent witnesses of injustice. But just as the judge began to speak, Vanessa's phone buzzed with a message that froze her blood. "Today is the last day you get to choose. Walk away or lose everything." Her breath caught. The courtroom blurred for a moment, but Vanessa's resolve sharpened. This was more than a case. It was her life. The courtroom was silent as the judge's words filled the air. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff. Vanessa felt tears sting her eyes. A rush of relief and vindication flooded her. Justice was not just a word anymore. It was a doorway she had unlocked. Carson sat stunned, his power unraveling before everyone. Outside, the media swarmed, voices buzzing with hope and outrage. Vanessa's story was now public, a beacon for others silenced by fear. That evening, as Vanessa held Hope close, the weight of the past months began to lift. She whispered promises of a new beginning, a life free from threats and lies. But peace was fragile. A final message appeared on Vanessa's phone. Justice is only the beginning. The real battle starts now. Vanessa looked down at Hope, her heart steady. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The door was open, but beyond it lay the unknown. Vanessa stood outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun casting long shadows over the pavement. The weight she carried for so long, of fear, injustice, and exhaustion, finally felt lighter. The battle had been fierce, and the scars ran deep. But she was still standing. Her hand rested on the silver key hanging around her neck, a symbol of courage earned through countless sleepless nights and quiet tears. This key wasn't just metal. It was the proof that doors once locked could be opened by those brave enough to try. Hope's small hand slipped into hers, warm and trusting. "Mommy," she whispered, "we made it." Vanessa smiled, the tears she'd held back now freely falling. "Yes, baby, we did, because sometimes the strongest keys are the ones we carry inside." She thought back to the nights in the office, the cruel words of her boss, the man who once held all the keys, believing he controlled every door in her life. But in the end, it was Vanessa who held the true power, the courage to fight, the love to protect, and the dignity that no one could take away. As they walked forward, the door ahead stood wide open, a new beginning, not just for Vanessa and Hope, but for every woman who ever felt silenced or unseen. And so the story ends, not with vengeance, but with liberation, with a reminder. She thought she worked for a man with all the keys, but in the end, she carried the courage to open the right door. If this story touched something in you, if it reminded you of your own battles, let it live in the comments below, because sometimes, my dear, the door isn't locked. We just need the right key and the courage to turn it. Thank you for walking this journey with me, Mr. Solomon.